Technique number 20. Parroting. Never be left speechless again. Like a parrot, simply repeat the last few words your conversation partner says. That puts the ball right back in his or her court, and then all you need to do is listen. Salespeople, why go on a wild goose chase for a customer's real objections when it's so easy to shake them out of the trees with parroting? Parroting your way to profits. Parroting is also a can opener to pry open people's real feelings. Star salespeople use it to get to their prospects' emotional objections, which they often don't even articulate to themselves. A friend of mine, Paul, a used car salesman, told me he credits a recent sale of a Lamborghini to parroting. Paul was walking around the lot with a prospect and his wife, who had expressed interest in a sensible car. He was showing them every sensible Chevy and Ford on the lot. As they were looking at one very sensible family car, Paul asked the husband what he thought of it. "Well," he mused, "I'm not sure this car is right for me." Instead of moving on to the next sensible car, Paul parroted, "Right for you?" Paul's questioning inflection signaled the prospect that he needed to say more. "Well, yeah," the prospect mumbled. "I'm not sure it fits my personality." "Fits your personality?" Paul again parroted. "You know, maybe I need something a little more sporty." "A little more sporty?" Paul parroted. "Well, those cars over there look a little more sporty." Aha! Paul's parrot had ferreted out which cars to show the customer. As they walked over toward a Lamborghini on the lot, Paul saw the prospect's eyes light up. An hour later, Paul had pocketed a fat commission. Want to take a rest from talking to save your throat? This next technique gets your conversation partner off and running, so all you have to do is listen. Or even sneak off unnoticed as he or she chats congenially away. 21. How to get 'em happily chatting, so you can slip away if you want to. Every father smiles when his little tyke beseeches him at bedtime, "Daddy, Daddy, tell me the story again of the 3 little pigs," or the dancing princesses, or how you and Mommy met. Daddy knows Junior enjoyed the story so much the first time he wants to hear it again and again. Junior inspires the following technique called encore, which serves 2 purposes. Encore makes a colleague feel like a happy dad, and it's a great way to give dying conversation a heart transplant. I once worked on a ship that had Italian officers and mostly American passengers. Each week, the deck officers were required to attend the captain's cocktail party. After the captain's address in charmingly broken English, the officers invariably clumped together, yakking it up in Italian. Needless to say, most of the passengers' grasp of Italian ended at macaroni, spaghetti, salami, and pizza. As cruise director, it fell on my shoulders to get the officers to mingle with the passengers. My not-so-subtle tactic was to grab one of the officer's arms and literally drag him over to a smiling throng of expectant passengers. I would then introduce the officer and pray that either the cat would release his tongue or a passenger would come up with a more original question than, "Gee, if all you officers are here, who is driving the boat?" Never happened. I dreaded the weekly captain's cocktail party. One night, sleeping in my cabin, I was awakened by the ship rocking violently from side to side. I listened, and the engines were off. A bad sign. I grabbed my robe and raced up to the deck. Through the dense fog, I could barely discern another ship not half a mile from us. 5 or 6 officers were grasping the starboard guardrail and leaning overboard. I rushed over just in time to see a man in the moonlight with a bandage over one eye struggling up our violently rocking ladder. The officers immediately whisked him off to our ship's hospital. The engine started again, and we were on our way. The next morning I got the full story. A laborer on the other ship, a freighter, had been drilling a hole in an engine cylinder. While he was working, a sharp, needle-thin piece of metal shot like a missile into his right eye. The freighter had no doctor on board, so the ship broadcast an emergency signal. International sea laws dictate that any ship hearing a distress signal must respond. Our ship came to the rescue, and the seaman, clutching his bleeding eye, was lowered into a lifeboat that brought him to our ship. Dr. Rossi, our ship's doctor, was successfully able to remove the needle from the workman's eye, thus saving his eyesight. Tell him about the time you... Cut to the next captain's cocktail party. Once again I was faced with the familiar challenge of getting officers to mingle and make small talk with the passengers. I made my weekly trek to the laconic officers' throng to drag 1 or 2 away, and, this time, my hand fell on the arm of the ship's doctor. I hauled him over to the nearest group of grinning passengers and introduced him. I then said, "Just last week, Dr. Rossi saved the eyesight of a seaman on another ship after a dramatic midnight rescue. Dr. Rossi, I'm sure these folks would love to hear about it." It was like a magic wand. To my amazement, it was as though Dr. Rossi was blessed instantly with the tongues of angels. His previously monosyllabic broken English became thickly accented eloquence. He recounted the entire story for the growing group of passengers gathering around him. I left the throng that Dr. Rossi enraptured to pull another officer over to an awaiting audience. I grabbed the captain's stripe-covered arm, dragged him over to another pack of smiling passengers, and said, "Captain Caffiero, why don't you tell these folks about the dramatic midnight rescue you made last week?" The cat released Caffiero's tongue, and he was off and running. Back to the throng to get the first officer for the next group. By now, I knew I had a winner. "Senor Salvago, why don't you tell these folks how you awakened the captain at midnight last week for the dramatic midnight rescue?" By then, it was time to go back to extract the ship's doctor from the first bevy and take him to his next pack of passengers. It worked even better the second time. He happily commenced his encore for the second audience. As he chatted away, I raced back to the captain to pull him away for a second telling with another throng. I felt like the circus juggler who keeps all the plates spinning on sticks. Just as I got one conversation spinning, I had to race back to the first speaker to give him a whirl at another audience. The captain's cocktail parties were a breeze for me for the rest of the season. The 3 officers loved telling the same story of their heroism to new people every cruise. The only problem was I noticed the stories getting longer and more elaborate each time. I had to adjust my timing in getting them to do a repeat performance for the next audience. "Play it again, Sam." Encore is what appreciative audiences chant when they want another song from the singer, another dance from the dancer, another poem from the poet, and in my case, another storytelling from the officers. Encore is the technique you can use to request a repeat story from a prospect, potential employer, or valued acquaintance. While the two of you are chatting with a group of people, simply turn to him and say, "John, I bet everyone would love to hear about the time you caught that 30-pound striped bass." Or, "Susan, tell everyone that story you just told me of how you rescued the kitten from the tree." He or she will, of course, demur. Insist. Your conversation partner is secretly loving it. The subtext of your request is, "That story of yours was so terrific, I want my other friends to hear it." After all, only crowd pleasers are asked to do an encore. Technique number 21. Encore. The sweetest sound a performer can hear welling up out of the applause is "Encore! Encore! Let's hear it again!" The sweetest sound your conversation partner can hear from your lips when you're talking with a group of people is, "Tell them about the time you..." Whenever you're at a meeting or party with someone important to you, think of some stories he or she told you. Choose an appropriate one from their repertoire that the crowd will enjoy. Then shine the spotlight by requesting a repeat performance. The added benefit of this technique is that once you've got them up and running with their conversation, you can sneak off and find more interesting company. One word of warning. Make sure the story you request is one in which the teller shines. No one wants to retell the time they lost the sale, cracked up the car, or broke up the bar and spent the night in jail. Make sure your requested encore is a positive story where they come out the big winner, not the buffoon. The full beauty of this technique will hit you like a happy thunderbolt the first time you use it with someone who is telling a long and wearisome tale. You simply tiptoe away and let the bore spin the story on and on with your friend. Of course, your friend may never speak to you again, but that's not germane to this chapter. The next technique deals with sharing some positive stories of your life. 22. How to come across as a positive person. Often people think when they meet someone they like, they should share a secret, reveal an intimacy, or make a confession of sorts to show they are human too. Airing your youthful battle with bedwetting, teeth-grinding, or thumb-sucking, or your present struggle with gout or a goiter, supposedly endears you to the masses. Well, sometimes it does. One study showed that if someone is above you in stature, their revealing a foible brings them closer to you. The holes in the bottom of presidential candidate Adlai Stevenson's shoes charmed a nation, as did George H.W. Bush's shocking admission that he couldn't stomach broccoli. If you're on sure footing, say a superstar who wants to become friends with a fan, go ahead and tell your devotees about the time you were out of work and penniless. But if you're not a superstar, better play it safe and keep the skeletons in the closet until later. People don't know you well enough to put your foible in context. Later in a relationship, telling your new friend you've been thrice married, you got caught shoplifting as a teenager, and you got turned down for a big job may be no big deal. And that may be the extent of what could be construed as black marks on an otherwise flawless life of solid relationships, no misdemeanors, and an impressive professional record. But very early in a relationship, the instinctive reaction is, what else is coming? If he shares that with me so quickly, what else is he hiding? A closet full of ex-spouses? A criminal record? Walls papered with rejection letters? Your new acquaintance has no way of knowing your confession was a generous act, a well-intentioned revelation on your part. Technique number 22. Accentuate the positive. When first meeting someone, lock your closet door and save your skeletons for later. You and your new good friend can invite the skeletons out, have a good laugh, and dance over their bones later in the relationship. But now's the time, as the old song says, to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. So far in this section, you have found assertive methods for meeting people and mastering small talk. The next is both an assertive and defensive move to help spare you that pasty smile we tend to sport when we have no idea what people are talking about. 23. How to always have something interesting to say. You've heard folks whine, I can't go to the party, I haven't got a thing to wear. When was the last time you heard, I can't go to the party, I haven't got a thing to say? When going to a gathering with great networking possibilities, you naturally plan your outfit and make sure your shoes will match. And of course, you must have just the right tie or correct color lipstick. You puff your hair, pack your business cards, and you're off. Whoa! Wait a minute. Didn't you forget the most important thing? What about the right conversation to enhance your image? Are you actually going to say anything that comes to mind, or doesn't, at the moment? You wouldn't don the first outfit your groping hand hits in the darkened closet, so you shouldn't leave your conversing to the first thought that comes to mind when facing a group of expectant, smiling faces. You will, of course, follow your instincts in conversation, but at least be prepared in case inspiration doesn't hit. The best way to ensure you're conversationally in the swing of things is to listen to a newscast just before you leave. What's happening right now in the world? All the fires, floods, air disasters, toppled governments, and stock market crashes pulverizes into great conversational fodder, no matter what crowd you're circulating in. It is with some embarrassment that I must attribute the following technique to a businesswoman in the world's oldest profession. For a magazine article I was writing, I interviewed one of the savviest operators in her field, Sydney Biddle Barrows, the famed Mayflower Madam. Sydney told me she had a house rule when she was in business. All of her female independent contractors were directed to keep up with the daily news so they could be good conversationalists with their clients. This was not just Sydney's whim. Feedback from her employees had revealed that 60% of her girls' work hour was spent in chatting, and only 40% in satisfying the customer's needs. Thus, she instructed them to read the daily newspaper or listen to a radio broadcast before leaving for an appointment. Sydney told me when she initiated this rule, her business increased significantly. Reports came back from her clients complimenting her on the fascinating women she had working for her. The consummate businesswoman, Ms. Barrows always strove to exceed her customers' expectations. Technique number 23. The latest news. Don't leave home without it. The last move to make before leaving for the party, even after you've given yourself final approval in the mirror, is to turn on the radio news or scan your newspaper. Anything that happened today is good material. Knowing the big deal news of the moment is also a defensive move that rescues you from putting your foot in your mouth by asking what everybody's talking about. Foot in mouth is not very tasty in public, especially when it's surrounded by egg on face. Ready for the big leagues of conversation? Let's go. Part 3. How to talk like a VIP. Welcome to the human jungle. When two tigers prowling through the jungle chance upon one another in a clearing, they look at each other. They freeze. Instinctively they calculate, if our staring came to hissing, came to scratching, came to clawing, who would win? Which of us has the stronger survival skills? Tigers in the wilderness differ little from the urban upright animals inhabiting the corporate jungle, or singles jungle, or social jungle. Humans start the process by looking at each other and talking. In the business world, while smiling and uttering, "How do you do?" "Hello," "Howdy," or "Hi," they are, like tigers, instinctively, instantaneously sizing each other up. They're not calculating the length of each other's claws or the sharpness of their teeth. They're judging each other on a weapon far more powerful to survival as they have defined it. Humans are judging each other's communication skills. Although they may not know the names of the specific studies first proving it, they sense the truth. 85% of one's success in life is directly due to communication skills. They may not be familiar with the U.S. Census Bureau's recent survey showing employers choose candidates with good communication skills and attitude way over education, experience, and training. But they know communication skills get people to the top. Thus, by observing each other carefully during casual conversing, it becomes almost immediately evident to both which is the bigger cat in the human jungle. It doesn't take long for people to recognize who is an important person. One cliché, one insensitive remark, one over-anxious reaction, and you can be professionally or personally demoted. You can lose a potentially important friendship or business contact. One stupid move and you can tumble off the corporate or social ladder. The techniques in this section will help ensure that you make all the right moves so this doesn't happen. The following communication skills give you a leg up to start your ascent to the top of any ladder you choose. 24. How to find out what they do without even asking. To size each other up, the first question little cats flat-pawedly ask each other is, "And what do you do? Then they crouch there, quivering their whiskers and twitching their noses with an obvious, "I'm going to pronounce silent judgment on you after you answer" look on their pusses. Big cats never ask outright, "What do you do?" Oh, they find out all right, in a much more subtle manner. By not asking the question, the big boys and big girls come across as more principled, even spiritual. After all, their silence says, a man or woman is far more than his or her job. Resisting the tempting question also shows their sensitivity. With so much downsizing, right-sizing, and capsizing of corporations these days, the blunt interrogation evokes uneasiness, The job question is not just unpleasant for those who are between engagements. I have several gainfully employed friends who hate being asked, "And what do you do?" One of these folks cuts cadavers for autopsies. The other is an IRS collection agent. Additionally, millions of talented and accomplished women have chosen to devote themselves to motherhood. When the cruel corporate question is thrust at them, they feel guilty. The rude interrogation belittles their commitment to their families. No matter how the women answer, they fear the asker is only going to hear a humble, "I'm just a housewife." Big boys and big girls should avoid asking, "What do you do?" for another reason. Their abstinence from the question leads listeners to believe that they are in the habit of soaring with a high-flying crowd. Recently, I attended a posh party on Easy Street. I suspect they invited me as their token working-class person. I noticed no one was asking anyone what they did, because these swells didn't do anything. Oh, some might have a ticker tape on the bed table of their mansion to track investments, but they definitely did not work for a living. The final benefit to not asking, "What do you do?" is it throws people off guard. It convinces them that you are enjoying their company for who they are, not for any crass networking reason. Technique number 24. What do you do not? A sure sign you're a somebody is the conspicuous absence of the question, "What do you do?" You determine this, of course, but not with those 4 dirty words that label you as either a ruthless networker, a social climber, a gold-digging husband or wife hunter, or someone who's never strolled along Easy Street. The right way to find out. So how do you find out what someone does for a living? I thought you'd never ask. You simply practice the following 8 words. All together now. How do you spend most of your time? How do you spend most of your time is the gracious way to let a cadaver cutter, a tax collector, or a capsized employee off the hook. It's the way to reinforce an accomplished mother's choice. It's the way to assure a spiritual soul you see his or her inner beauty. It's a way to suggest to a swell that you reside on Easy Street too. Now, suppose you've just made the acquaintance of someone who does like to talk about his or her work. Asking, "How do you spend most of your time?" also opens the door for workaholics to spout off. "Oh, golly," they mock moan, "I just spend all my time working." That, of course, is your invitation to grill them for details. Then they'll talk your ear off. Yet the new wording of your question gives those who are somewhere between at leisure and work-addicted the choice of telling you about their job or not. Finally, asking, "How do you spend most of your time?" instead of, "And what do you do?" gives you your big cat stripes right off. 25. How to know what to say when they ask, "What do you do?" Now, 99% of the people you meet will, of course, ask, "And what do you do?" Big winners, realizing someone will always ask, are fully prepared for the interrogation. Many folks have one written resume for job seeking. They type it up and then trudge off to the printer to get a nice, neat stack to send to all prospective employers. The resume lists their previous positions, dates of employment, and education. Then at the bottom they might as well have scribbled, "Well, that's me, take it or leave it." And usually they get left. Why? Because prospective employers do not find enough specific points in the resume that relate directly to what their firm is seeking. Boys and girls in the big leagues, however, have bits and bytes of their entire work experience tucked away in their computers. When applying for a job, they punch up only the appropriate data and print it out so it looks like it just came from the printer. My friend Roberto was out of work last year. He applied for 2 positions, a sales manager of an ice cream company and head of strategic planning for a fast food chain. He did extensive research and found the ice cream company had deep sales difficulties and the food chain had long-range international aspirations. Did he send the same resume to each? Absolutely not. His resume never deviated 1 iota from the truth of his background. However, for the ice cream company, he highlighted his experience turning a small company around by doubling its sales in 3 years. For the food chain, he underscored his experience working in Europe and his knowledge of foreign markets. Both firms offered Roberto the job. Now he could play them off against each other. He went to each, explaining he'd like to work for them, but another firm was offering a higher salary or more perks. The 2 firms started bidding against each other for Roberto. He finally chose the food chain at almost double the salary they originally offered him. To make the most of every encounter, personalize your verbal resume with just as much care as you would your written curriculum vitae. Instead of having one answer to the omnipresent, "What do you do?" prepare a dozen or so variations, depending on who's asking. For optimum networking, every time someone asks about your job, give a calculated oral resume in a nutshell. Before you submit your answer, consider what possible interest the asker could have in you and your work. Here is how my life can benefit yours. Top salespeople talk extensively of the benefit statement. They know when talking with a potential client, they should open their conversation with a benefit statement. When my colleague Brian makes cold calls, instead of saying, "Hello, my name is Brian Tracy, I'm a sales trainer," he says, "Hello, my name is Brian Tracy from the Institute for Executive Development. Would you be interested in a proven method that can increase your sales from 20 to 30% over the next 12 months? That is his benefit statement. He highlights the specific benefits of what he has to offer to his prospect. My hairdresser, Gloria, I discovered, gives a terrific benefit statement to everyone she meets. That's probably why she has so many clients. In fact, that's how she got me as a client. When I met Gloria at a convention, she told me she was a hairdresser who specialized in flexible hairstyles for the businesswoman. She casually mentioned she has many clients who choose a conservative hairstyle for work that they can instantly convert to a feminine style for social situations. "Hey, that's me," I said to myself, fingering my stringy little ponytail. I asked for her card, and Gloria became my hairdresser. Then, several months later, I happened to see Gloria at another event. I overheard her chatting with a stylish gray-haired woman at the buffet table. Gloria was saying, "And we specialize in a wonderful array of blue rinses." Now that was news to me. I didn't remember seeing one gray head in her salon. As I was leaving the party, Gloria was out on the lawn talking animatedly with the host's teenage daughters. "Oh yeah," she was saying. "Like, we specialize in these really cool, up-to-the-minute styles." "Good for you, Gloria." Like Gloria the hairdresser, give your response a once-over before answering the inevitable "what do you do?" When someone asks, never give just a one-word answer. That's for forms. If business networking is on your mind, ask yourself, how could my professional experience benefit this person's life? For example, here are some descriptions various people might put on their tax return. Real estate agent, financial planner, martial arts instructor, cosmetic surgeon, hairdresser. Any practitioner of the above profession should reflect on the benefit his or her job has to humankind. Every job has some benefit, or you wouldn't get paid to do it. The advice to these folks is, don't say real estate agent. Say, I help people moving into our area find the right home. Don't say financial planner. Say, I help people plan their financial future. Don't say martial arts instructor. Say, I help people defend themselves by teaching martial arts. Don't say cosmetic surgeon. Say, I reconstruct people's faces after disfiguring accidents. Or if you're talking with a woman of a certain age, as the French so gracefully say, tell her, I help people to look as young as they feel through cosmetic surgery. Don't say hairdresser. Say, I help a woman find the right hairstyle for her particular face. Go, Gloria. Putting the benefit statement in your verbal nutshell resume brings your job to life and makes it memorable. Even if your new acquaintance can't use your services, the next time he or she meets someone moving into the area, wanting to plan their financial future, thinking of self-defense, considering cosmetic surgery, or needing a new hairstyle, who comes to mind? Not the unimaginative people who gave the tax return description of their jobs, but the big winners who painted a picture of helping people with needs. A nutshell resume for your private life. The nutshell resume works in non-business situations too. Since the new acquaintances will always ask you about yourself, prepare a few exciting stock answers. When meeting a potential friend or loved one, make your life sound like you will be a fun person to know. As a young girl, I wrote novels in my mind about my life. Leal, squinting her eyes against the torrential downpour, bravely reached out the window into the icy storm to pull the shutters tight and keep the family safe from the approaching hurricane. Big deal. Mama asked me to close the windows when it started to rain. Still, marching toward the open window, I fancied myself the family's brave savior. You don't need to be quite so melodramatic in your self-image, but at least punch up your life to sound interesting and dedicated. Technique number 25. The nutshell resume. Just as job-seeking top managers roll a different written resume off their printers for each position they're applying for, let a different true story about your professional life roll off your tongue for each listener. Before responding to, what do you do? Ask yourself, what possible interest could this person have in my answer? Could he refer business to me? Buy from me? Hire me? Marry my sister? Become my buddy? Wherever you go, Pack a nutshell about your own life to work into your communications bag of tricks. 26. How to sound even smarter than you are. Did you ever hear someone try to say a word that was just too darn big for his tongue? By the smile on the speaker's face and the gleam in his eye as the word limped off his lips, you knew he was really proud of it. To make matters worse, he probably used the word incorrectly, inappropriately, and maybe even mispronounced it. Ouch. The world perceives people with rich vocabularies to be more creative, more intelligent. People with larger vocabularies get hired quicker, promoted faster, and listened to a whole lot more. So big winners use rich, full words, but they never sound inappropriate. The phrases slide gracefully off their tongues to enrich their conversation. The words fit. With the care that they choose their tie or their blouse, big players in life choose words to match their personalities and their points. The startling good news is that the difference between a respected vocabulary and a mundane one is only about 50 words. You don't need much to sound like a big winner. A mere few dozen wonderful words will give everyone the impression that you have an original and creative mind. Acquiring this super vocabulary is easy. You needn't pore over vocabulary books or listen to tapes of pompous pontificators with impossible British accents. You don't need to learn $2 words that your grandmother, if she heard, would wash out of your mouth with soap. All you need to do is think of a few tired, overworked words you use every day. Words like smart, nice, pretty, or good. Then grab a thesaurus or book of synonyms off the shelf. Look up that common word even you are bored hearing yourself utter every day. Examine your long list of alternatives. For example, if you turn to the word smart, you'll find dozens of synonyms. Some words are colorful and rich, like ingenious, resourceful, adroit, shrewd, and many more. Run down the list and say each out loud. Which ones fit your personality? Which ones seem right for you? Try each on like a suit of clothes to see which feel comfortable. Choose a few favorites and practice saying them aloud until they become a natural staple of your vocabulary. The next time you want to compliment someone, say, on being smart, you'll be purring, "Oh, that's so clever of you. My, how resourceful. That was ingenious." Or maybe, "How astute of you." And now, for men only. Gentlemen, we women spend a lot of time in front of the mirror, as if you didn't know. When I was in college, it used to take me a full 15 minutes to fix myself up for a date. Every year since, I've had to add a few minutes. I'm now up to an hour and a half gussying myself up for an evening out. Gentlemen, when your wife comes down the staircase all dolled up for a night out, or you pick a lady up for dinner, what do you say? If you make no comment except, "Well, are you ready to go?" how do you think that makes the lady feel? My friend Gary is a nice gentleman, and he occasionally takes me to dinner. I met him about 12 years ago, and I'll never forget the first time he arrived on my doorstep for our date. He said, "Leal, you look great." I adored his reaction. I saw Gary a month or so later. On my doorstep again, "Leal, you look great." The precise same words as the first time, but I still appreciated it. It's been 12 long years now that this gentleman and I have been friends. I see him about once every 2 months, and every darn time it's the same old comment. "Leal, you look great." I think I'll show up one evening in a flannel nightshirt and a mud pack on my face. I swear Gary will say, "Leal, you look great." During my seminars, to help men avoid Gary's mistake, I ask every male to think of a synonym for pretty or great. Then I bring up one woman and several men. I ask each to pretend he is her husband. She has just come down the stairs ready to go out to dinner. I ask each to take her hand and deliver his compliment. "Darla," one says, "you look elegant." "Ooh," every woman in the room sighs. "Darla," says another, taking her hand, "you look stunning." "Ooh," every woman in the room swoons. "Darla," says the third, putting her hand between his, "you look ravishing." "Ooh." By now every woman in the room has gone limp. Pay attention, men. Words work on us women. More unisex suggestions. Suppose you've been at a party and it was wonderful. Don't tell the hosts it was wonderful. Everybody says that. Tell them it was a splendid party, a superb party, an extraordinary party. Hug the hosts and tell them you had a magnificent time, a remarkable time, a glorious time. The first few times you say a word like glorious, it may not roll comfortably off your tongue. Yet you have no trouble with the word wonderful. Glorious doesn't have any more syllables than wonderful. Neither does it have any more difficult sounds to pronounce. Vocabulary is all a matter of familiarity. Use your new favorite words a few times and, just like breaking in a new pair of shoes, you'll be very comfortable wearing your glorious new words. Technique number 26. Your personal thesaurus. Look up some common words you use every day in a thesaurus. Then, like slipping your feet into a new pair of shoes, slip your tongue into a few new words to see how they fit. If you like them, start making permanent replacements. Remember, only 50 words makes the difference between a rich, creative vocabulary and an average, middle-of-the-road one. Substitute a word a day for 2 months, and you'll be in the verbally elite. 27. How to not sound anxious. Let them discover your similarity. Tigers prowl with tigers, lions lurk with lions, and little alley cats scramble around with other little alley cats. Similarity breeds attraction. But in the human jungle, big cats know a secret. When you delay revealing your similarity, or let them discover it, it has much more punch. Above all, you don't want to sound anxious to have rapport. Whenever someone mentions a common interest or experience, instead of jumping in with a breathless, "Hey, me too, I do that too," or "I know all about that," let your conversation partner enjoy talking about it. Let her go on about the country club before you tell her you're a member too. Let him go on analyzing the golf swing of Arnold Palmer before you start casually comparing the swings of golf greats Greg, Jack, Tiger, and Arnie. Let her tell you how many tennis games she's won before you just happen to mention your USTA ranking. Several years ago, I was telling a new acquaintance how much I loved to ski. He listened with interest as I indulged in a detailed travelogue of places I had skied. I raved about the various resorts. I analyzed the various conditions. I discussed artificial versus natural snow. It wasn't until near the end of my monologue that I finally had the sense to ask my new acquaintance if he skied. He replied, "Yes, I keep a little apartment in Aspen." Cool. If he had jumped in and told me about his ski pad right after I first told him how much I liked skiing, I'd have been impressed. Mildly. However, waiting until the end of our conversation, and then revealing he was such an avid skier that he kept an Aspen ski pad, made it unforgettable. Here's the technique I call, kill the quick me too. Whenever people mention an activity or interest you share, let them enjoy discussing their passion. Then, when the time is right, casually mention you share their interest. Oh, I must have been boring you. I waited weeks for the opportunity to try it out. Finally, the moment presented itself at a convention. A new contact began telling me about her recent trip to Washington, D.C. She had no idea that Washington was where I grew up. She told me all about the Capitol, the Washington Monument, the Kennedy Center, and how she and her husband went bicycling in Rock Creek Park. Momentarily, I forgot I was keeping my mouth shut to practice my new technique. I was genuinely enjoying hearing about these familiar sights from a visitor's perspective. I asked her where she stayed, where she dined, and if she had a chance to get into any of the beautiful Maryland or Virginia suburbs. At one point, obviously pleased by my interest in her trip, she said, "You sound like you know a lot about Washington." "Yes," I replied. "It's my hometown, but I haven't been back there in ages." "Your hometown?" she squealed. "My goodness, why didn't you tell me? I must have been boring you." "Oh, not at all," I replied honestly. "I was enjoying hearing about your trip so much I was afraid you'd stop if I told you." Her big smile and barely audible, "Oh gosh," let me know I had won a new friend. When someone starts telling you about an activity he has done, a trip she has made, a club he belongs to, an interest she has, anything that you share, bite your tongue. Let the teller relish his or her own monologue. Relax and enjoy it too, secretly knowing how much pleasure your conversation partner will have when you reveal you share the same experience. Then, when the moment is ripe, casually disclose your similarity. And be sure to mention how much you enjoyed hearing about his or her shared interest. Technique number 27. Kill the quick me too. Whenever you have something in common with someone, the longer you wait to reveal it, the more moved and impressed he or she will be. You emerge as a confident big cat, not a lonely little stray hungry for quick connection with a stranger. P.S. Don't wait too long to reveal your shared interest, or it will seem like you're being tricky. 28. How to be a you firstie to gain their respect and affection. Sex! Now that I have your attention, 2-bit comics have been using that gag from the days when 2 bits bought a 4-square meal. However, big winners know there's a 3-letter word more potent than sex to get people's attention. That word is you. Why is you such a powerful word? because when we were infants, we thought we were the center of the universe. Nothing mattered but me, myself, and I. The rest of the shadowy forms stirring about us, which we later learned were other people, existed solely for what they could do for us. Self-centered little tykes that we were, our tiny brains translated every action, every word into, how does that affect me? Big winners know we haven't changed a bit. Adults camouflage their self-centeredness under a mask of civilization and politeness. Yet the human brain still immediately, instinctively, and unfailingly translates everything into terms of, how does that affect me? For example, suppose, gentlemen, you want to ask a colleague, Jill, if she would like to join you for dinner. So you say to her, there's a really good new Indian restaurant in town. Will you join me there for dinner tonight? Before answering, Jill is thinking to herself, by good, does he mean the food or the atmosphere or both? Her reverie continues. Indian cuisine, I'm not sure. He says it's good. However, will I like it? While thinking, Jill hesitates. You probably take her hesitation personally, and the joy of the exchange diminishes. Suppose instead you had said to her, Jill, you will really love this new Indian restaurant. Will you join me there this evening for dinner? Phrasing it that way, you've already subliminally answered Jill's questions, and she's more apt to give you a quick yes. The pleasure-pain principle is a guiding force in life. Psychologists tell us everyone automatically gravitates toward that which is pleasurable and pulls away from that which is painful. For many people, thinking is painful. So, big winners, when they wish to control, inspire, be loved by, sell to people, or get them to go to dinner, do the thinking for them. They translate everything into the other person's terms by starting as many sentences as they can with that powerful little three-letter word, you. Thus, I call the technique communication. Communicate when you want a favor. Putting you first gets a much better response, especially when you're asking a favor, because it pushes the asker's pride button. Suppose you want to take a long weekend. You decide to ask your boss if you can take Friday off. Which request do you think he or she is going to react to more positively? Can I take Friday off, boss? Or this one? Boss, can you do without me Friday? In the first case, boss has to translate your can I take Friday off into can I do without this employee Friday? That's an extra thought process. And you know how some bosses hate to think. However, in the second case, boss, can you do without me Friday? You did boss's thinking for her. Your new wording made managing without you a matter of pride for boss. Of course, she said to herself, I can manage without your help Friday. Communicate your compliments. Communication also enriches your social conversation. Gentlemen, say a lady likes your suit. Which woman gives you warmer feelings? The woman who says, I like your suit, or the one who says, you look great in that suit? Big players who make business presentations use communication to excellent advantage. Suppose you're giving a talk and a participant asks a question. He likes to hear you say, that's a good question. However, consider how much better he feels when you tell him, you've asked a good question. Salespeople don't just tell your prospects. It's important that convince them by informing them. You'll see the importance of. When negotiating, instead of the result will be, let them know you'll see the result when you. Starting sentences with you even works when talking to strangers on the street. Once, driving around San Francisco hopelessly lost, I asked people walking along the sidewalk how to get to the Golden Gate Bridge. I stopped a couple trudging up a hill. "Excuse me," I called out the window. "I can't find the Golden Gate Bridge." The pair looked at each other and shrugged with that "how stupid can these tourists get" look on their faces. "That direction," the husband mumbled, pointing straight ahead. Still lost, I called out to the next couple I encountered. "Excuse me, where's the Golden Gate Bridge?" Without smiling, they pointed in the opposite direction. Then I decided to try communication. When I came upon the next strolling couple, I called out the window. "Excuse me, could you tell me where the Golden Gate Bridge is?" "Of course," they said, answering my question literally. You see, by phrasing the question that way, it was a subtle challenge. I was asking, in essence, are you able to give me directions? This hits them in the pride button. They walked over to my car and gave me explicit instructions. Hey, I thought, this you stuff really works. To test my hypothesis, I tried it a few more times. I kept asking passers-by my 3 forms of the question. Sure enough, whenever I asked, "Could you tell me where?" people were more pleasant and helpful than when I started the question with "I" or "where." I'm sure when they recover the flight box from the fall of man under a fig leaf in the Garden of Eden, it will convince the world of the power of the word you. Eve did not ask Adam to eat the apple. She did not command him to eat the apple. She didn't even say, "Adam, I want you to eat this apple." She phrased it, as all big winners would, "You will love this apple." That's why he bit.